Hi, I'm B, and welcome back to my channel where I talk about stuff that I am interested in and stuff that I like and all of that good stuff. Today I am talking about short stories. I am a huge short story reader because it is one of the quickest types of fiction to teach. I have read a lot of short stories because I'm a teacher, and that's what I taught for a long time was middle school and high school literature. So I decided today I was going to talk about some of my favorites, some that I just literally think about all the time. And they're in no particular order. I'm not going to say like this is like our definitive ranking or anything. I tried to pick a variety of authors here. I don't know if I really hit my mark on some of them, but this is my starting list, let's just say. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is A Family Supper by Kazuo Ishiguro. This short story I came across, I think it was during a contemporary British literature class. This short story, A Family Supper, is one of the reasons why he is one of my favorite authors. The short story is about two siblings who return home to meet with their father. Their mother is no longer around. It seems like she has passed, and something's going on with the dad. And they're home to share family supper with their father. Throughout the story, you find out a lot of information about what's going on with the dad and what's going on with these two siblings who are going abroad and kind of making a life for themselves outside of their family home, and how that's started to affect their dad and their family dynamic. Like, the premise of it doesn't sound very exciting, but the way that the story is set up, the way that the whole family supper is framed is so cool, and just it's like a very ambiguous ending. I like a lot of ambiguous endings. You will find that a lot of the short stories on this list have ambiguous endings, and this is one of the best in my opinion because it does leave the reader to think about the motivations of certain characters and, well, is he planning something? What is this dinner? Is it special? Is it not special? I will let you decide, and you should definitely read A Family Supper by Kazuo Ishiguro. The next short story on my list is Vaster Than Empires and More Slow by Ursula K. Le Guin. I think I downloaded a short story collection by Ursula K. Le Guin, and it was massive. It was like 900 pages. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to tackle this. And I read the first short story and I realized I was way out of my depth. So I stopped reading it. But the first short story has come back to haunt me, I feel like, since reading it, because the concept of it has just kind of recurred in my life a little bit. This group of scientists going to colonize a new planet, and they all have their own specialties on the ship, and then when they get to the planet, kind of like their purpose in the mission. So there's like a biologist, there's like a surgeon, there's like an anthropologist, and then there's also like this empath. And they all interact differently and communicate differently. And the big thing about this group is that everybody hates the empath. Kind of being stuck together has caused the empath to just reflect back a lot of the negative characteristics of each person. So they get to the planet, and there's this sentient vegetation, and it's kind of, they're trying to decide whether it's hostile or whether it's just like defending itself, and how they're going to approach this sentient life form. And so the story, I don't want to give too much away, but it's a really interesting short story, especially one that like flew under the radar for me for a very long time. And that is Vaster Than Empires and More Slow by Ursula K. Le Guin. The next short story that always comes up for me, especially recently, is The Yellow Wallpaper by Perkins. What's her first name? Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I knew it. Gilman. Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Okay, I knew Perkins was in her name. This short story has just like haunted me recently. The short story is about a woman who is essentially going through postpartum, and her husband thinks that she's going insane, and so he locks her in a room with this wallpaper, and she basically begins to hallucinate stuff about the wallpaper. It's a great short story that just carries true to this day with like the idea behind gaslighting and how men in particular look at women and their wives when they give birth, and the hormonal aspects of that whole experience, feeling like you're going crazy and kind of actually going crazy. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's a great short story and really creepy and weird, and I'm always here for the Yellow Wallpaper. The next short story that I have to talk about is by an author who I've read so much of his short story collections that it's almost impossible for me to choose just one of his short stories that I think about all the time, because it's his writing that I think about all the time. A lot of his short stories have really spoken to me, and that author is Ray Bradbury, and the short story that I chose just for this video is The Pedestrian. It's probably one of the shortest short stories that I've ever read. It's like almost flash fiction in how short and concise it is, but it is essentially about this guy walking in a city where walking is illegal and he gets arrested. It is such an interesting look at how our society has evolved around vehicles and staying inside and being kind of protected from the rest of the world. Really, really ahead of its time almost in the messages and themes that he touches on, but also just very interesting look at his perspective on that. I believe he wrote this short story when he was working in Los Angeles and was trying to walk around and found it near impossible to do that in Los Angeles. So really fascinating, interesting background to the story as well. All of his short stories that I've ever read have honestly just spoke to me so much. And I just think about his writing and his short stories in general a lot, because I've read so much by him and they just always been very like captivating to me. The other short story that I have to talk about is from an iconic short story queen, Shirley Jackson. But no, the short story I'm going to talk about of hers is not The Lottery, which is her most iconic short story, I think, of all time. But instead, I'm going to talk about one that was published after her death, which I found through, I think it's like an NPR podcast where they have actors read short stories. I honestly can't remember. It's been so long since I've listened to this podcast, but they read this short story and they mentioned that this short story was published after she has died. And it was found in her collection that she had never published. And this short story is called Paranoia. It is such a great short story. It almost feels unfinished, but it almost feels intentional that it's unfinished. It's about this man who is coming home from work. He lives in New York City and he's trying to get a birthday gift for his wife. And everywhere he goes, no matter what store he goes into or subway route he takes or bus he climbs onto, he thinks this man in this white hat is following him. And through the entire short story, you're wondering, is this guy really being followed or is he paranoid? You know, every time I've given it to students and shown them, they've all been like, wait, that's the end? What happens next? What happens next? And they all kind of get mad at me, but also like, I see how excited they are to read. And that's what makes it so great. That's Paranoia by Shirley Jackson. Amazing. Okay, so which ones have I talked about? Talked about Family Supper, and then the last, that's it. I'm just going to stop at 5 because I could definitely talk about 50 more, but I'm thinking that maybe I'll save the other short stories that I'm thinking about for another video. But that's where I'm going to stop. My top 5 short stories that I think about all the time. There are more short stories that have come to mind since just talking about this video and thinking about the list of short stories that I feel kind of in my brain in a regular basis. If you have any short story recommendations, please put them down in the comments. I'm always looking for another cool, awesome short story to get into, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!